ngayon, kung bakit ipapadala ng Amerika ang kanilang mga dating empleyado sa ating bansa. Wala naman tayong kinalaman dito. Hindi ba nila tayo binigyan ng dahilan? What reason was given by the US for making the aforementioned request, if any? Ambassador Romualdez, Secretary Manalo, and as mentioned by Senator Tolentino, are they in fact refugees? What is the understanding of the DOJ, the DFA, and the BI of the term refugee? Ambassador Romualdez has explicitly stated these are not refugees. They are former Afghan employees of the U.S. government. I need clarification po. Secretary Manalo, Ambassador Romualdez, please respond and lend us light here. Secretary Teodoro is shaking his head. Would you like to both in, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Honor. Technically, they're not refugees because basically they're not displaced. They're in their homeland right now. They have not applied for political asylum or any other thing. They're not on extraterritorial jurisdiction. My understanding is that their visas for the United States shall be processed within this country because of administrative difficulties of the U.S. government, because of their bureaucracy in conducting any processing, but they are not refugees as of this time. They may become refugees
That is
if
correct.
their visas are denied and they are not
And they're not
repatriated.
allowed to be repatriated.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm in full agreement. I think they are not refugees, as rightly pointed out by Ambassador Babes from all this. Is that correct, Ambassador? Was your statement regarding the fact that these are not refugees we are speaking of, and there is no doubt that the Philippines upholds and takes pride in our history of giving succor and refuge to international refugees. Ambassador Romualdez, please. These are not refugees,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Madam Chair. They are not refugees. They are employees or former employees of the U.S. government, and they're asking us if we could help them in processing them, precisely as pointed out by Secretary Teodoro, that it is a matter of administrative in nature.
Thank you. That being the case, I get affirmation as well from DFA Legal that they are not refugees. That is correct? Okay, if that is the status of these individuals, what is the basis, therefore, of the executive branch of government for admitting them into the Philippines under Section 47 of Commonwealth Act 613 on the power of the President to admit aliens for humanitarian reasons, expressly referring only to refugees? Yes, Secretary Manalo, please. What is the basis, since they clearly are not refugees, they cannot be accommodated under Section 47 of the Commonwealth Act?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, the notion as we understood it from the concept note of the United States is there's no intention to leave them here in the Philippines. They're only going to use the Philippines as a temporary site for their processing for their eventual trip to the United States, provided they pass all the vetting. And the U.S. In our talks has also assured us, in case we agree, that they would ensure that none of the SIV applicants would be left behind, nor have the option to consider remaining in the Philippines to seek refugee status. So this would only be, in effect, a temporary situation. And if I could just...
Given the extraordinary circumstances, and we appreciate the emergency concern, the worry is, what shall be their status while they remain in the Philippines? Will they be non-immigrants or immigrants? What kind of Philippine visa will they be given? Under what treaty will their rights and obligations be governed? The problem is that the special immigrants visa has been promised in 2 weeks. The reality is that we are also aware that they could come as late as 59 days. In the United States, 77,000 continue to wait for their visas for periods longer than 4 years. May we have clarity on their status while they remain in the Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the Afghan nationals who would be coming here are, in fact, all Afghan nationals are listed as Category A. In other words, restricted nationals who are required to apply for a visa in the Philippines. And normally we would give them up to 30 to 59 days.
So sorry, what will they be again? Non-immigrant, immigrant?
Non-immigrant.
So non-immigrant. So klaro yan, non-immigrant. Okay.
Category A,
And under which treaty are we governing the rights and obligations? Non-immigrant sa ilalim ng alin?
Okay, I'll have to consult on that, Madam Chair. Which treaty?
Madam Chair, we had a meeting.
Yes, Secretary.
on Monday
Oo.
with the undersecretaries of the DOJ and Undersecretary Lazaro and Undersecretary Vasquez. Actually, the major problem here really is an immigration problem and a legal problem. And so I think if the DOJ is already prepared, because they still have to come out. We have requested them finally for an opinion on the potential status of these people and the problems in case, or the way forward in case their SIVs are denied. To date, Madam Chair, we are still waiting for the opinion. It was only formalized last week that the DFA shall be the lead agency in our conference, person-to-person conference. And we are very sensitive to the issues raised by the chairperson that this not being per se a humanitarian issue, it could turn into a humanitarian issue in case the obligations of the other party are not complied with. Therefore, this was raised to us by the DOJ.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're very pleased, and truly the differences are glaring between refugees, non-immigrants, and immigrants insofar as regulations, restrictions, and the freedom of movement is concerned. So, what would be off the top of our heads the status if they were non-immigrants? They would be granted freedom of mobility while they are waiting, as they are in the National Convention Center in Arlington, Virginia, as we're well aware. Or as non-immigrants, will they be confined to a single space, apparently in New Clark City? Is that the consideration? What other distinctions do you think are important? I believe that the NBI is deeply concerned about the security permutations in as much as they would impact on our own public safety.
Madam Chair, if I may be
Yes,
permitted,
Secretary, please.
to answer, even the housing is still under consideration. We also do not want them to be housed as if they were detainees, which is the furthest thing from the image we want to portray. And keeping them for an extended period of time within a confined environment, particularly with their children involved, will not only complicate their physical liberty, but the end state of their mental health and wellness too. That is why, Madam
There's also, Secretary, sorry to butt in, but actually, there's also the consideration that they'll be coming back and forth to apply for their special immigrant visa from New Clark City and all the provinces involved, going towards the U.S. Embassy in Metro Manila. Is that our understanding?
Madam Chair, insofar
Because that
as
is
the-
what is stated so far in the brief.
No, Madam Chair, as far as the informal discussions between us last week is that all the services from the processing to their medical care shall be done on site.
This is not medical care. I think this has to do with their visa application.
Even then, Madam Chair, the U.S. Embassy has to place extension services.
Parang iba yung
Leave
sinabi ng
aside.
DFA. Ang sabi ng DFA, mag-a-apply pa sila sa consular offices ng US Embassy.
Ah,
Wala dun sa Clark.
Madam-
Mabalik-balik sila. Kaya yung sinasabing confined to a certain space, hindi realidad yun. Yes, Secretary
But I
Manalo.
clarify.
Although NBI is recommending, according to their briefer, I hope I quote you right, na sana magpadala ng visa, special visa officer na lamang dun sa lugar, imbes na ganito. Yes, Secretary Manalo, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, when we referred to the U.S. Embassy, et cetera, here, that is the U.S. proposal. And we still have to react to that. And I think Secretary Teodoro, after we talked, felt that we feel perhaps that this should not be the arrangement. But the U.S. proposal, at least in their concept note in discussions, was that the applicants would visit the U.S. Embassy here in Manila for a visa interview, and then an embassy-identified hospital for medical evaluation for the actual issuance of U.S. visa. That is the U.S. suggestion.
Yes, that's the American
We
suggestion.
are
As,
not necessarily in agreement with that.
I understand. The reason, of course, is that until October of last year, in the National Convention Center of Virginia, where they were actually being processed, they could leave the facility at any time, were not considered prisoners by any means, and could therefore have freedom of mobility. Is that the same thing we're suggesting? And have we consulted New Clark City, Tarlac, for example, Pampanga, Subic, and the rest of the ramparts? Yes, Secretary Teodoro, please.
Madam Chair, we have not proceeded to that extent as far as I know. And if there will be, insofar as the Department of Defense and perhaps even our fellow security sector officials, the least amount of area they can travel from and to would be naturally physically better for us. Now, the optics of this may be different, but the least amount of travel. However, we have not discussed in thorough detail a definite site where this will be. And we definitely have to consult with the officials involved in the areas, just like when we apply for an ECC, for that matter, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm just curious why there's been a change of heart. I mean, in the past, we're aware that following the withdrawal of the United States from Kabul, many Afghans were processed in the United States. Bakit bilang nabago? They used to house the Afghan evacuees in facilities within the U.S., like I said, the National Conference Center in Virginia. And then in September 2022, there appears to have become a new strategy where the Afghans arriving in the U.S. no longer will be temporarily housed in safe haven facilities in the U.S. What is the reason? Maybe Ambassador Romualdez, you can tell us what is the reason for the change in strategy of the United States? Bakit ayaw na nila tanggapin yung mga Afghan doon sa National Convention sa Arlington? Napakarain na nung dumaan doon. At biglang nagbago at biglang tayo na ang kinakatukan.
Well, actually, they're really, the fact is that there are quite a number of them. And as you said, they have that here in Virginia. Pero the main reason why they're also asking other countries, we're not the only one, by the way. There are other countries. I think Germany is also being asked. They also had a processing center in Qatar, and from what I understand, also in Albania. Is because there's just so many of them that they would like to be able to do it quickly as possible, because they have a timeline, I suppose, and that's the reason why we're being asked as an ally of the United States. We are one of a number of countries that they have requested if they could use it. They use the country for the processing of these Afghan nationals that work with the United States government.
Yes, Ambassador, you say there are just too many Afghans. We're talking about tens of thousands because we've heard that 25,000 were already processed through UAE, 10,000 in Qatar. You now mentioned Germany and Albania. Are there tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? Is there a projected number to this enormous migration?
The number that we received was around 50,000 that are still for processing.
50,000.
Yes, this includes people who work with the U.S. government and their families.
Pero kung 50,000, yun din ang hinihingi sa Pilipinas. You mean to say 100%, yung buong 50,000, lahat babagsak sa Pilipinas?
Hindi naman.
Bakit na huminto yung UAE at yung Qatar? Ba't sila huminto? Bakit huminto yung US? Dati naman pinoprocess doon, nakatenga pa, 77,400. Bakit tumigil ang US? Bakit sila tumigil? Bakit bigla Pilipinas ang naisip?
Well, hindi naman naisip. Ang pagkaalam namin, they were asking other countries, and the Philippines is one of them because of the fact that we have this relationship with the United States. We're an ally, so they thought the Philippines could be a place where we could allow them to process their special immigrant visas.
The reason I ask, sir, is that UAE and Qatar are obvious processing areas because of their distance. And they're already doing this, 25,000 and 10,000. Why did they stop? Kung 50,000 na lang ang butal, kayang-kaya na nila idagdag doon. Nagkakaintindihan sila. Magkapareho sila sa kinakain, sa gawi, sa iba't ibang paninindigan at paniwala.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit biglang tinigil. Pero ang pagkaalam ko, humingi sila ng tulong sa atin kung pwede nila i-process yung kanilang mga government employee, yung nagtrabaho sa kanila dito sa Pilipinas. As one of the many countries that they're asking for this.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not unwilling to help. Like all Filipinos, we have an open arms policy to all refugees throughout the world at any time. However, it appears to me that we are an unlikely candidate simply because napakalayo po natin. Parang nilalayo natin sila lalo, samantalang meron ng existing. Unang-una, kung babagsak rin sila sa US, bakit hindi nga ituloy-tuloy na lamang yung nandyan sa Virginia? Nahinto ba, since Washington DC is clearly by Virginia, have they stopped processing people in the National Convention Center, please?
I don't think so. I think they're still processing a number of them as of now.
I see, because I understand from press releases that with the Operation Allies Refuge, Operation Allies Welcome, and the other enduring welcome efforts of the United States, the Biden administration announced that Afghan nationals in October 1 of 2022 will no longer be able to enter the US under the Humanitarian Parole Authority. So tinigil sa US, samantalang ito empleyado ng US. Bakit tayo ang magiging sangkalan? Yun lang ang tanong ko.
Mhm. Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit sa atin na. Pero as I said, isa tayo sa mga ibang mga bayan na humingi sila ng tulong kung pwede idaan doon bago nila dalhin sa Amerika.
Would you know if Thailand, our good neighbor and ASEAN partner, which is a treaty ally of the United States, has been requested by the United States to process Afghan employees as well?
I am not sure, Madam Chair.
I have been told that no request was ever made to Thailand.
Mhm.
Why only the Philippines?
Well, as I said, they approached us in October, and we said that we will consider it, and we're going to study the matter. But we have not asked them why he picked us. The only reason they told us is because they felt that the Philippines was an ally that they could ask this particular favor, perhaps if you want to call it that. And they have brought it up to the highest levels in our government, including the president.
Okay, so if the US is unable or unwilling to temporarily house their Afghan employees in US soil, why don't they go to US territories such as Guam, Puerto Rico, Guantanamo? Secretary Manalo, you're raising your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought I would just say a few words on this issue on the why the U.S. might have approached us. Of course, we can only surmise, but what I gather is aside from being a partner and a treaty ally, I think they also are aware of our long tradition of providing humanitarian assistance. So that's why they have approached us. On the
To refugees, Secretary, you
Well-
already said these are not refugees.
well, the humanitarian aspect. And on the issue of why they're not being processed in the United States is actually these are SIV applicants and not applying for refugees. I mean, they're not refugees as such. And as we understood from the United States, their laws require that this category, SIV applicants, have to be processed in third countries, not in the United States. So perhaps those could be the reasons why, in fact, that's one of the reasons why they approached us on this.
Eh,
Now-
pero magulo rin sa atin yan, di ba? Kasi under our immigration rules, and the BI is here to confirm, Norman, please, Afghan nationals are Category 1 nationals. They should first obtain Philippine visa before entry in Islamabad. Isn't that correct? So that puts into question their status if they remain in the Philippines as well. So that also puts into question our ability to impose our laws on all those in our territory. And we'll sacrifice all that simply because we'd like to accommodate a favor that could probably be better served elsewhere. Just a question.
That's why we have to be very clear, if we were to accede to this, that our laws would be followed. And if they have a stay of 30 to 59 days, for example, in accordance with our category A, then we would have to apply that strictly. And we would have to make that very clear to the United States that they could not stay longer than they are allowed, according to Philippine law, because of their specific category. And that's the point we would, if we ever get into negotiations with the US formal, we would have to insist on these points.
Yes, Secretary, this is a real problem because of the change in strategy in the United States and the refusal now to extend humanitarian parole authorities. We are not certain they will actually receive their special immigrant visas. And the delay, as we know, has been tremendous and admitted by the Americans themselves. Sadly, unfortunately, the Humanitarian Parole Authority is one that myself and my family utilize, so I'm inordinately familiar with the same. It guarantees no residence. It guarantees no rights or any other abilities under that status, nor any immigrant or other privileges. So it's not something I would wish on anyone.